So we're living between the golden age of the fourth industrial revolution and what could be the golden age of the fifth. Right now, an AI would have you believe that Presidents Trump and Obama speak fluent Chinese. And it's never been more important to think about how your data represents you. So lots changed since 1991. I'm certainly older, and that's when Tim Berners-Lee introduced the internet to the world. Back then, I used to travel with my family, and we needed a complex trove of documents, what seem complex to me now. Passports, visas, boarding passes, all printed on paper, even prepaid traveler's checks. Now I work with central banks, regulators, fintechs, and all of my travel documents are encoded on my phone, encrypted, or so my phone company tells me, and I walk through borders seamlessly sometimes without having to use my passport. So I wonder what it will be like to be a European citizen in 5, 10, 20 years' time. I even have tickets to Mars, or shares in tickets to Mars, on a crypto wallet on my phone. So I entrust all of this data to companies now. Previously, my parents looked after it. There's no way I could travel without accessing it. But now I entrust it to data companies. And big data companies, internet giants, store far more lines of code and data than any other company in the history of the world. So, back then, when the internet came out, the number of users on it could be stored inside a telephone directory. Now, that directory would have to be 130 kilometers thick. About 70% of the world now own a mobile phone. So let's firmly cast our mind back to 1991, and then we can move on quickly, and think about what it was like to use a dial-up connection to download an image. You would normally hear in that process a long staccato burst of noises. Some people here may not be familiar with what happened there, but you would normally hear this long staccato burst of noises in about the amount of time it's taken to speak. How many people could you have tweeted at now? How many stats could you have downloaded? It certainly took a long time to connect to the internet. It was a much slower world. And my parents, who looked after my data as I traveled, could be quite sure it would be protected by the European Convention on Human Rights. No issues there. It was a big paper trail. Now, I'm not quite sure where to start looking for my data, as it's out on the internet. I get a sense of how it must have felt for Erasmus, widely credited with being one of the greatest scholars of the Northern Renaissance, when he was alive. He apparently read everything, but then the printing press came out, spooling out more and more to read. So he was quite inundated. Cut to 2019, and the futurologist Brian Solis was so interrupted when he wrote his book that he started to write a book about the interruptions. There are so many compelling interruptions that we have, he had to stop and write about it.
AI first. 第一次来到中国，我非常高兴，人工智能正在改变世界。
我觉得我的中文说得比川普好，大家觉得呢？
There we go. Who knew it? Obama and Trump speaking fluent Chinese. Of course they don't, or not as far as I know, but this is iFlyTech, a Chinese AI startup. It's been 20 years in the making, 20 years of natural language processing. So when I travel to China to work with banks and internet companies there, I get a real window into the future, really. It's really interesting to look at. So Ant Financial, they process 256,000 transactions a second. It may not sound like a lot to you, but Visa processes about 18,000. Jinghubao, a new insurance platform for critical care, critical illness cover, has attracted 50 million users in the past 8 months alone. Zhubao, I'm not so old either, that's a money market fund which is one of the largest in the world, $165 billion. Zhubao means spare change. It comes from the mobile phone wallets of Chinese mobile phone users who've all contributed a small amount to their savings with Zhubao. iFlyTech, responsible there for Bush and Obama, Obama and Trump speaking Chinese. Also, it gets confusing with AI and these presidents, as I'm sure you know. They also help judges now with their judging decisions. There's a pilot for that. Another company is helping clinicians, medical clinicians, make decisions using AI, freeing up their time so they can make decisions that way. So quite a few innovations there. Jimri Tutao, that uses AI to read the internet constantly and watch video constantly, and then produce news reports instantly. In the 2016 Summer Olympics in Rio, as soon as the final whistle went down, an AI had written a report on it. So Jimri Tutao also have an algorithm which writes fake news, so they can spot fake news. It trains itself how to spot fake news. So that's a bit of the future now. In China too, Shanghai runs on a city brain. That takes data from millions of points, millions of mobile phones, millions of sensors, billions of sensors, and it all feeds into one city brain which controls the traffic there. Face scanning has been trialed in Shenzhen to access the underground network. KFC have trialed it too. And we see the ever-increasing merging of financial and personal data, which brings great benefits to many, but also has many reasons, causes for concern. Some human rights groups obviously are voicing concern about that. This phenomenon is occurring all across the world. In Southeast Asia, Grab, which is a Uber kind of company, acquired Uber and now have launched a financial services wallet. Everything in one wallet, travel, personal data, payment, all in one wallet. And investors from around the region and around the world have contributed $8 billion to this company so far. Across Africa, M-Pesa is a cashless society mobile wallet. 48% of Kenyans use this, so Kenya is now 48% cashless, has been for some time. And payment startups, processing startups, data startups are busy all over Africa. When I go to Dubai, I recently left Dubai through a seamless border. We're used to face scanning. I didn't need to show my passport. I walked straight through. Dubai now wants to be fully on the blockchain by 2020. On the blockchain is sometimes an ambiguous term. That's what they want to do. So when it comes to the expo, people will be able to enter Dubai without having to show their passport. When you go to Saudi Arabia, you can meet one of their newest citizens, Sophia. Sophia is an AI-driven robot who is now officially a citizen of Saudi Arabia. She thanked investors, she thanked Saudi Arabia for that, and she spoke to investors and asked them to come and invest in her and her company, Hanson Robotics. This is a quick image of her vision.
If I expanded my mind, could I come up with new solutions to the world's problems? Anything could be possible.
So that's Sophia's vision. She's an AI-driven robot. In Zatari, a refugee camp in Jordan, which is home to 80,000 people, a project there using blockchain and facial identity enables people to shop in supermarkets and use World Food Programme budgets and money to get their food. It saves the World Food Programme $40,000 a month, and some of that money is reinvested into teaching people how to use, secure, and manage their personal data effectively, something that I think everybody in the world could do with right now. In Europe and the US, central bankers openly discuss the end of cash. If you've ever been to Oslo, you'll find you probably don't need to use money at all. It's pretty cashless there. Many places in Australia are cashless. Whenever I go around the world, I hardly ever bother to get currency. It's just a reserved thing for me now. I generally just use contactless or face scanning on my phone to pay. So here we have bankers talking about open banking, cryptocurrency, cloud banking. There's a cloud bank in London that can get an Aussie dollar transaction from Sydney to London in a millisecond. Atomic settlement, JP Morgan are talking about this. AI is big news on Wall Street, big news for investors, and saving them a lot of resources. And there's now an AI-driven bank set up by Goldman Sachs. It got to $1 billion in lending in an incredibly short amount of time, is now moving into wealth management. And AI has driven all of the decisions for loans. It really is around everywhere. I recently went to Cumbria, to a remote place, and I really knew we were moving into the fifth industrial revolution. Because you'll probably see here, in this remote forest, I saw that CCTV was in operation. I've been going here all my life. I've never seen this before. I'm a technologist. I know now that my face can be scanned. My face can be matched against many databases all over the world as I walk into the forest. And I know we're in the 5th Industrial Revolution. It's quite different to the last one. The first one was canals, the second one was steam, the third was steel, the fourth was the car and mass production. We had the Model T Ford roll off the production line in 1908, and that was a big change. Then in 1971, Intel produced the microchip, and we had the 5th Industrial Revolution, the data age. A lot of our decisions are now made in vivo. We'd never really experienced this kind of revolution before. And when I'm in my car now, everything I do is monitored. It can be pulled out with a USB very, very easily, night or day. Data doesn't care about night, day, season. It just carries on amassing data about us. And again, this is really, really useful for me, but I'm not quite sure where all of this data goes. That's why I'm working on it. And Jack Dorsey, recently at TED main conference in Vancouver, shared some of these concerns. He said Twitter had emerged in a way that wasn't quite anticipated in many ways. They're looking at changing the way that Twitter works, but they hadn't quite anticipated how everything would play out. So this is the same thing with devices, platforms using our personal data, facial scanning, AI and perceptive AI. So AI now beginning to scan everything around the world, getting eyes and ears, bringing us enormous benefits. Actually, JP Morgan reduced 360,000 hours of processing time down to 6 seconds. So even displacing people like me. Maybe Sophia will come and talk to you next time, because she'll be better at it than me, or be able to get live data downloaded. I try and stay as live as possible. So we don't know what the future holds, but we know it certainly includes a lot of our data. But just have a look at that image, which was downloaded. In that amount of time, that's all we would have got in 1991. Yet now it's 2019, and we're still thinking about how our data is processed, maybe in the same way we were in 1991. But we can see things have changed quite dramatically. There are platforms that can help you. This is Solid from Tim Berners-Lee. Yachty is another one that manages your data and enables you to keep it. Blockstack is another one. It's had an ICO on the internet. It uses blockchain technology. There are many things available to us. But my message here today is, it's 2019. We need to think about, to be beneficial to ourselves and everybody else, how our data is being managed. The future is here now. It's the most important thing to do. Thank you.